I'm Ray Gervin, the publisher and owner of International Bulk Journal. Good morning to everybody in the Americas. Good afternoon to everybody in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. Good evening to everybody in Asia. And a special shout out for those who I know are watching in Australia. Thank you for staying up late. The COVID-19 pandemic has affected the whole world. And the maritime bulk industry is facing unprecedented challenges. Since 1981, IBJ has been informing our industry through the magazine and lately through our website and newsletter, and bringing the industry together through the IBJ Awards. Sadly, this year, the IBJ Awards have been cancelled for obvious reasons, but we've brought the industry together on this webinar, and we've got a great panel to start off with. Great to see and hear their thoughts, faced up to the recent challenges, and their general thinking, and perhaps even some predictions. Thank you to all of those. I'll introduce them in just a moment, but thank you for being such an exceptional panel and giving up your time to participate today. Really appreciate it. Thank you to our sponsors. The webinar will be 90 minutes long, and halfway through we'll have a commercial break where we'll see some excellent promotional films from our sponsors. Thank you, Sonalia, North Sea Port, Rijsdijk, Fednav, IBJ for Saniteurs, and Fleet Management. And a big thank you to everybody who has registered. We now have just about 600 people watching worldwide. I hope you find it interesting. Thank you also for all of your questions. We really had about 50 questions in, so there's no way we're going to get through them all. That will be in the second part of the webinar, but we'll do our best. And so, esteemed panel, it's great to have Paul Pathy, who is the President and CEO of Fednav Limited. Fednav is Canada's largest operator of ocean-going bulk carriers. It consists of more than 120 vessels, 64 of them owned. They have the largest fleet of Great Lakes rated ocean-going vessels and the world's largest fleet of ice carriers. And on top of all that, they operate 11 terminals around North America. Welcome, Paul. It's great to have Sander with us, Sander Rijsdijk, who we will certainly be able to hear from. He is the Director of Bulk Cargo and Shipping at the Port of Rotterdam. The Port of Rotterdam, of course, is Europe's largest seaport and a genuine world cargo hub. As the largest dry bulk port in Europe, they have unrivaled services and facilities to handle any type of bulk commodity. It's a real honor to have Mrs. H.K. Joshi with us, the Chairperson and Managing Director of the Shipping Corporation of India. As India's premier shipping line, the Shipping Corporation owns and operates around 1/3 of Indian tonnage. In other markets, such as tankers, containers, and others, but they're also India's major bulk carrier. Great to have Jan Deleman with us, the President of Ocean Transportation at Cargill. Cargill, a company that needs no introduction in our business. For 155 years, they've been bringing food, agricultural, and industrial products to consumer industries. And Cargill Ocean Transportation itself, at any one time, can have more than 600 vessels on charter. Great to have Morten Lovstad with us, the Global Business Director for Bulk Carriers, DNVGL. DNVGL, of course, is the world-leading classification society and recognized advisor for the maritime industry, enhancing safety, quality, energy efficiency, and environmental performance. And last but not least, blessed to have Rajiv with us, a good friend of IBJ, Rajiv Agrawal, the Chief Executive Officer of SR Ports in India. SR Ports specialize in developing and operating a range of bulk terminals They handle also liquid and break bulk, but it's dry bulk in India, where they have terminals on both the east and west coast, serving the Indian mining, power generation, and steel industry. The terminals have a current capacity of 95 million tons per year, and I know that's being expanded to 110 million tons. So a major player. That is our panel. So here we go. I'm going to ask every one of them for their opening remarks, and also same question to everybody. What during this past 6 months of the pandemic has been your biggest challenge? Paul Pathy.
Okay, well, it's morning for me, so good morning, even though it's not morning for anybody else, I don't think. But anyway, Ray, just want to say thanks to you and to IBJ for putting on this event. It's good to see some people, if not face to face. Obviously, it's been a crazy few months for everybody, but mostly for us. I'm just proud of our team here in Montreal and around the world for really keeping the big machine moving. It's pretty impressive, I think, how well we as a company have adjusted, and frankly, how well the industry has adapted to sudden changes. Our commercial teams have kept rolling, our support teams have kept rolling, the crews continue to be humbled by the sacrifice and the hard work made by the crews on our ships. Things have just managed to keep going. At Fednav, we're pretty financially stable and financially conservative. So despite the lean times that we saw in the first few months, we're able to maintain stability and never waver from the key goals, right? You keep the ships moving, which means we can keep our customers served. Every single one of our employees still working and has since day one. And we can focus on our ongoing performance and our future developments. So again, challenging times, but we think we're up for it. And we're obviously looking forward to the end of the crisis and moving forward as a company.
Great, thank you, Paul. Sander, I just want to check that we can hear you, your opening statement, and what has been your biggest challenge?
Good afternoon, Ray. Good afternoon, everybody. Here in the Netherlands, it's the afternoon. And thank you for your invitation, Ray. As being a port authority, of course, especially at the beginning of COVID-19, our main challenge was to keep the port operational. And at the same time, of course, we are quite humble in that respect, because, of course, our main task as port authority is to make sure that the vessels can sail in and out, approximately 30,000 on an annual basis, in a safe manner. But it is our customers, the process industry, the terminals, the agencies, the shipping companies, hinterland transportation companies, and so on, who actually keep the port operational. But of course, we have also done everything in our power to keep port operations up and running. And as a landlord, we took a so-called initiative for a COVID-19 port consultation, joined by the many main stakeholders in the port, which allowed us to keep a finger on the pulse and determine where possible actions were required. But fortunately, so far, these were not needed to take serious actions. And in our communications, we have constantly stated that there will not be a lockdown of the port itself, simply because this would have been a very unwise decision with great impact, since the port is a lifeline that provides us with access to food, medical supplies, and so on. And in fact, we haven't seen a big decrease in terms of vessel calls. They are not much filled as normal, but in terms of calls, we haven't seen a real decrease. Next to all that, keeping the port operation, we have, in order to help avoid liquidity problems, we have taken measures to, where necessary, relieve the financial strain on businesses in the port. And for example, we have extended the payment terms for seaport dues to 30 days. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Sander. Mrs. Joshi, your opening statement and the biggest challenge you've faced in the past 6 months.
Very good day to all my fellow panelists and also to all the participants for today's webinar. I would like to specially thank International Bulk Journal, popularly known as IBJ, and particularly its publisher, Ray Girvan, for the wonderful interactive platform that he has offered to all of us. And I look forward to the interactions today, as well as I'm sure there are going to be learnings from this session, which I will benefit from. Of course, in terms of challenge, the last 6 months, I think, have been challenging for all of us. They've been challenging for the entire human race, I would say. And it's been particularly challenging for all the leaders, and I'm no exception to it. The pandemic has been a crisis that most of us were ill prepared, and we had not anticipated either the intensity or the implications of the pandemic, since we haven't seen anything like that during our time. Now, I'm trying to bring in the human perspective to my challenge, because business perspective, I think we all understand what's happening to economies, we all understand. So as a leader, the challenge remains to be able to instill faith and guide your team members, building up their confidence and trying to make it look as if everything is normal when it's not normal. I think that's the biggest challenge. And the initial phases, the potential crisis was to look beyond the obvious and to take quick steps to prepare the organization for these challenges, both in respect to the IT infrastructure as well as with respect to the employee response. And as the pandemic progressed, the biggest challenge was to ensure physical and emotional well-being of the employees, both as well as those on the field. I believe that it's the man behind the machine which is most important. And this challenge the pandemic has posed on us was not on the machine, it was on the man behind the machine. So I consider that to be my primary challenge in the last 6 months. Thank you, Given.
Thank you, Mrs. Chachi. Jan Deleman, same question and your opening statement.
Well, thanks first of all for having me here, Ray. It's not the usual judging that I do for you, so I'm missing a little bit the stacks of paper to go through with the very interesting new things. But it's good that you put this up. Looking back at the last 6 months, it is clear that it's been a challenge, but working for a company that has been around for 155 years and has seen many of these kind of events, and not the exact ones, but has had turbulent times and has again risen to the challenge to keep on moving food around and keeping supply chains going. It's been super proud and humbling to see what we've been able to do. So that's the first thing I would like to say. If you talk about challenges, I would actually split them in two. And the first is more internal, and the second one I'll talk about is a little bit more external. And internally, I think we were well prepared working at home. That worked very well. People put in everything in very difficult situations, kids homeschooling, you name it, everything. And that went very well. We did realize that after 3-4 months, people were a little bit getting fatigued, working at home situation. And the whole mental health piece started becoming a bit of an issue. So we spent a lot of time over the last 3 months really trying to also look at that part of safety, which is very important. So that I would say has been a bit of a challenge of keeping people going in a very tough situation where they're basically on their own. Externally, I would say the big issue has been logistics. Initially, we had a lot of requests of moving cargoes and accommodating changes in schedules, and we're used to that, so we've been able to accommodate that again. But what is a much bigger challenge, and we will talk about that a little bit later, is the whole challenge around crew and people getting stuck at sea. And that has been something that is very difficult to solve, specifically as a company on its own. So that has been, for me, the biggest challenge actually that I've seen over the last 6 months, and one that is still not solved.
Yeah, true. We will come to that. Thank you, Jan. Morten, the opening statement from you and your biggest challenge during the pandemic.
Thank you, Ray, and good afternoon to all of you. Thanks for hosting this good webinar, Ray and IBJ, and also for being part of this distinguished panel. It's a pleasure. I think the biggest challenge for DNVGL as the biggest glass societies in the world is that we had to ensure business continuity for all our customers, not only for ourselves, but we also had to be available 24/7, even during the pandemics. And I'm proud to say that we have managed that. We have had all our offices continuously open. All our surveyors have been able to operate, although it has, of course, been challenges with respect to travel restrictions and so on. I think we have benefited from having a very broad network of surveyors, the biggest network of surveyors in the world, and having local presence in many places so that we could avoid a lot of travels. Having said, we of course also had then to adapt to the reality where we had to use digital tools, and luckily we've been having a digitization effort for quite a few years already. So already before the pandemic started, we had conducted close to 15,000 remote surveys, and that has increased by more than 33% now during the last 6 months. So we have a lot of experience in working in these circumstances. I'd like to say the same as some of the other panelists have shared, that it's of course some challenge with fatigue of our employees. I think a lot of them are used to travel maybe 150, 200 days a year, and now suddenly they have to stay one place all the time and they can't go into the office. So the lack of being able to talk with your colleagues on a regular basis, on a more informal and regular basis, and also instilling a company culture. I think that's probably a big challenge these days. But so far so good, I would say.
Good. Thank you, Morten. And as I said, last but very much not least, Rajiv, your opening statement, please, and the biggest challenge.
Thanks, Ray, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here, and Ray, for this opportunity. I feel that one is that it has a kind of, this whole pandemic has united the world, because if all of us, I was just thinking, it's a global phenomenon. So it's not that America is affected and Canada is not affected, or India is affected, or something else is. So the whole world is affected. So we are all, very seldom it happens that there is a problem which affects everyone everywhere in the world in the same way. So at least it is something which is uniquely. So I think it's a huge opportunity, because it is an opportunity which is pushing us towards some far-reaching changes which are going to be there forever. I don't think that this is something which is going to come and go away. Okay, of course, the problem can go away, but then it will go away by that time. I think there will be some far-reaching changes that we would have done in our own lifestyle, in work style, in the way we deal with people and everything. So it's a great opportunity to learn. It's a great opportunity to adapt. And personally speaking, I think on a personal front as well as in my work front, I think we have all come closer, because I think we have various levels of calls which we have in the organization, which started at the apex level, which is myself and my main staff members all over the world. So we get together and we speak about it. Everyone's problem is being shared, discussed. So which earlier was more infrequent, but today we are having a daily call for 15-20 minutes, half an hour, sometimes 45 minutes. So I think it's a huge opportunity to adapt to a new way. We have started, because initially everyone was working from home, though as a port industry, we had people working all on the field from the day one. And in India, we had the situation where, we're a large country. So the pandemic was first more of a big city phenomenon. And then it went into smaller places. So our ports, which are more near, in the smaller places, which are not big cities necessarily. So there, they were not affected to start with, to that extent. But now, of course, everyone is impacted, and it has penetrated to everywhere. So I think we all were working from home. There was some kind of informality. People accepted each other in more, there was a more informal style of functioning, but which was very effective. People were short and crisp and to the point. So things which used to take months sometimes, we could resolve them in days. A lot of projects, a lot of studies, a lot of understanding, which we, management stuff, which we would do, where it will pass on, take longer time. Everyone will take their own time to take decisions. Now there is no such thing. On a call every day, we are resolving most of the issues. So I think it's a great thing. We have started to work with lesser number of people, and with more of mechanization, and everyone is available, right from the secretary or the the PMO of the country to everyone is available on a call. So you can speak to anyone. They're mostly available. They will give you time, so you don't have to travel. So I think there are a lot of good things which have happened. And in fact, if we consciously make a note of all the good things which are there, we are eating healthy, our lifestyles are more healthy. So there's a lot of opportunity with this pandemic.
Thank you, Raji. Very wise words. And I think what's come across from everybody there is everybody gives their staff a mention, the people, the backbone of our industry. Which brings me to my first question, and Jan touched on it before. We really are in the midst of a crew change crisis with more than 300,000 seafarers stranded at sea. I know a lot of shipping companies, ship management companies, and industry bodies on our side in dry bulk, Intercargo and the International Chamber of Shipping, even the IMO, who will be raising it next week at the United Nations. It's a humanitarian crisis too. So maybe I'll start with Jan, who mentioned it. In your experience, then, how have ship owners generally and performed in responding to this crew change crisis, Jan?
Yeah, so let me take a step back, right? So for us, safety, environment, and seafarer welfare is extremely important. So it is something that is very close to our heart, actually. What we have seen, it's an extremely complicated problem because it's not just getting people off board of a ship, which in a lot of places in the world was actually not allowed over the last 6 months. So that is one thing to deal with. But also getting these people back home is what you really want to do has been close to impossible for a big chunk of the time. So I think sometimes people underestimate the complexity of the problem. Specifically for us, having 600 to 700 ships and not directly employing the crew, by definition, we have to work together with the owners. And that's what we've been doing. So we've been very proactive with owners, talking about crew change plans, seeing where we could accommodate. We've had cases where we deviated ships, for instance, to Manila. We've had cases where we put specific ships on specific trades to allow for certain things to happen. But as you can imagine, with a fleet of 600 to 700 ships, there is always cases where you do get stuck and there's not always a lot you can do. So we've been really trying everything we can from our side to influence. But in the end of the day, this is a problem that needs to get sorted on the international level. And I don't think any company on its own can do it, apart from trying to share best practices and supporting each other. And what we've seen is all the owners have been trying to do their best, but a lot of them have just simply been stuck in regulations and red tape.
Yeah, that's true. Mrs. Joshi, I'll turn to you now as the main ship operator in such a great seafaring nation as India. I mean, what steps have the shipping corporation been taking in relation to seafarers?
Mr. Girvan, it was indeed a challenge for India like any other country. However, I would say we've been very proactive in terms of the Director General of Shipping taking out very regular SOPs with respect to crew change. And while the complete lockdown happened on 24th of March 2020, so the initial days were very challenging when there was no crew change, frankly. And but within a month's time, the Director General had started issuing some directives, and SCI had a slight advantage in terms of since we employ all Indian seafarers, being a government company. So since all our seafarers were Indian, and we could easily do the crew change in India because we did not have too much of sign on and sign off on ports because there was a substantial problem on the foreign ports. What we did was, even when a vessel was not calling a particular port, we did a substantial sign off of a port, and that was primarily of the Kochi port. And we had one particular vessel during the pandemic which we were disposing of. And this was, the buyer was already identified, and the vessel was to be handed over in Colombo. And that was Maharaja Agrasen, our vessel. And because of the pandemic, the crew sign on and sign off was not happening. We engaged our own vessel, which was Parshuram, and we ensured a crew change from vessel to vessel to facilitate. So we've done some novel things during the pandemic, and I think every crisis teaches us how to cope up with it, along with all the problems which all the nations have had and all the ship owners have had. SCI, I can very proudly say that we've almost managed to do more than 80% of our crew change so far during this pandemic. So that's been a very big thing. But of course, the most challenging thing with respect to crew change, it's not only signing on or signing off. It's very important that you ensure that the seafarers reach their home safely. So for us, quality was always an issue more than the quantity, and we've done controlled crew change. Following all the SOPs that have been issued by Director General of Shipping from time to time. And while we've been able to sign off, the challenge remains on signing on, because signing on is also, in this crisis, many people are not coming forward, seafarers are not coming forward. And you can do a complete crew change, a sign off, only if the signing on also takes place at the same momentum. So procedures, of course, have become more tedious. Procedures from port to port are different. Those are becoming very difficult. But in SCI, we've adopted technology to a great extent. We are doing an online signing on for the ratings. They don't need to come physically. And we've also facilitated all the seafarers' licenses which got expired. We've got those blanket approvals done. We've also got helped through the Ministry of External Affairs, those seafarers whose passports expired while they were still sailing. And other than this, the general concern has been to ensure that the entire fleet remains COVID-free. And I can confirm to you, even while I'm talking to you, that all the SCI's vessels remain COVID-free today.
Good. Thank you, Mrs. Joshi. And Paul Pathy, I'd like to get your take on the crew change crisis. And of course, remembering that there are people ashore as well who we have to put measures in place to protect. So, Paul, your comments on crew change crisis.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Look, like everybody else, it's been one of our biggest. We try to pride ourselves on having a pretty good ongoing rapport with our seafarers, and they immediately became one of our big priorities in terms of getting them off when you can, but also just their general well-being, because it was clear from the first few days that they weren't going to be getting off anytime soon. So the focus in the early months really had to be on seafarer well-being and welfare, and what can we do to make their lives easier as opposed to getting them off, which simply was not possible in the first few months. We're fortunate in the sense that a lot of our ships call our home city here in Montreal and in Canada. The Canadian government's been very cooperative. We work very closely with Transport Canada. So we were able to kind of help push the issue here on home soil and able to rotate a lot of our crews off, again, kind of here in Canada. Again, that did not necessarily address the challenge of getting them home, as Jan pointed out, because, you get them off here in Montreal, they're in a hotel maybe, but you still have to get the visas lined up to travel. And so we've been active in actually helping arrange charter flights for crews in both directions. And again, just putting pressure on anywhere we actually have offices to put gentle, of course, friendly pressure on government to assist and recognize the seriousness of the issue. I mean, I've had people ask me, from outside the industry, if it's how serious it is. And I'd say, look, you get to the point where you test this, if the crews of the world decide to go on strike, so to speak, the world stops turning effectively, right? And everything that we rely on every day for food and shelter and clothing and basic needs effectively will stop. So I think this has to be a global priority, and I feel like it's finally getting to that point. We're pleased to say that of our entire fleet of seafarers, I think I've got 1,400 or so. We've got about 22 that are 1 to 3 months overdue now that will be gone within 2 weeks. So we've managed to kind of get them turned over, so to speak. Again, it's been a big priority, but again, a lot of it comes to the ability to rotate our ships through, say, friendly ports and involve government in kind of recognizing the seriousness of the problem and getting it done. Good.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Morten, it's particularly interesting to get your views with DNVGL and with safety in mind, because I've heard stories of crew being stranded for up to 17 months, which is way, way beyond the 11th month in the convention. So with that in mind and how that may affect safety on board, what's your take on the whole crisis, Morten?
Well, I mean, we also acknowledge, of course, the big strain on the crew, although it's mainly then the operator's responsibility to how to handle it. We, of course, try to be as flexible as we can and conduct the surveys and keep the ship moving. So, I mean, what we can do is then, of course, to do some of the necessary safety measures. We do that remotely when it's impossible for us to go on board as well. But then also we try to be flexible if you need postponements and so on. And then, of course, we also introduced what we call a certification of infection prevention. So, I mean, that's an important part also, that you want to avoid getting this pandemic spread to the crew itself. So also, how can you then have procedures in place to avoid spreading of the COVID-19 into the crew? So that's some of the measures that we implemented.
Okay, thank you. Sander, the port of Rotterdam, a global hub with many ships calling. So, from your perspective, how have you been trying to assist ships' crews?
Yeah, sure. Of course, as Port Authority also have acknowledged that the corona measures make it more difficult for crews on board seagoing vessels to change over, and the crew is therefore on board longer than usual, which we have seen sometimes causes considerable emotional stress as well. And therefore we have, together with the municipal health service, agreed to allow ship visits for pastoral and also social support. And next to that, of course, the nautical service providers in the port, like pilots, have taken extra measures to prevent infection. Next to that, furthermore, there is a frequent tuning between companies and nautical service providers in the port on developments and best practices. And what we finally did is where we issued a regular newsletter from the Port of Rotterdam to inform the port community, share best practices, but also give attention to positive and volunteer actions in the port in order to keep up the faith. So that's what we did so far.
Good. Sander, while I have you on as well, it strikes me that there are other people who need protection in terms of the dock workers and stevedores. So what measures have you been putting in place there in Rotterdam?
Well, actually, the same as nautical providers, they did the extra measures to prevent infection. So actually, so that's the main thing we did so far.
Good. Thank you, Sander. Thank you. And Rajiv.
And sorry, apart from that, Ray, what we also did, maybe to mention, is that we worked with health declarations. Almost forgot that to mention.
Right. I see. Okay. Thank you. Rajiv, the whole crew change crisis, and also, as I said to Sander, your other personnel, the dock workers. I mean, what measures are in place, and how effective have they been?
Yeah, so as far as the dock workers are concerned, it was initially, it was a bit difficult to get the workforce, especially, on the key cranes, etc., because these are some key people. Though we employ mostly, very few, because we are highly mechanized. So the number of workers working are, and we don't have any legacy issues of large workforce. So we do not have very large workforces in each of our ports, but still we ensured that we maintain a minimum level of staffing. We cut out many of the other staff which was more service oriented, and reduced the number of people that we had, and maintained the distances, ensured that they were tested, and if measures were taken. Initially, we had to also provide for them to stay in the premises itself, because what was happening was that the communities would not allow the people to go out to work. So if people were working, so the neighbors and the people, they would not allow people to go out and work in the ports. So it was a big issue. So we had to essentially keep them with us and provide for their stays and for food and everything.
Okay.
Initially, maybe a month or so, but thereafter, I think people got used to working. So, but I think basically the safety measures have to be ensured. Regular testing have to be ensured.
Good. Thank you, Rajiv. Yeah. Thank you, Rajiv. Sandra, I think I'll go back to you and move on to how the port has performed during this past 6 months versus your operating plan for 2020. So how have tonnages held up?
Yes. For that, it's yes, I will focus then here on the financial impact on ourselves. It's of course very much relates also to the business, because you must know that our revenue model is mainly based on leasing out land for 60% nowadays, and 4 dues related to cargo flow, seagoing throughput. And we are particularly impacted by the fact that seagoing throughput from January to August this year for the whole port dropped so far with 9.5% compared to the last year, from 316 to 286 million tons. And until the end of the year, we expect throughput to be 10% lower by the end of 2020 compared to 2019, based on calculations made in July, and we will update these calculations beginning of October. But I don't think there will be a lot of difference expected. So, So, and for the dry bulk, to be precise, this dropped with even 20%, from 48 to 39, 49 to 39 million tons, and that was mainly caused by less throughput of coal and iron ore.
Right.
Yeah.
Good, Sander. Thank you for that update. And over to Rajiv in terms of the financial performance, because you were one of the first to call the turn and be talking about a V-shaped recovery back in July. So is that holding up, and how is the port performing financially?
Yeah, of course. So we had a big dip in April and June, where we went down by almost in June, April maybe by 60%, and then we recovered in June, and by July we were almost 90% at like 90% level. In August and September we are 100% up. So we expect that this year we will be flat. We may be, if everything goes well, we'll have no growth, of course, and maybe we'll be at a flat level. So we expect that by the end of the year, we would be, say, around 55 to 60 million tons, and in overall terms, in financial numbers, the first quarter we did lose some revenues, and it hit our bottom line, but we were not, we didn't lose money as such. We still made positive contributions, and for the year we will be probably 5% lower in profitability or similar. So
Good.
that's what we expect. We were apprehensive about that this recovery, because the world is still not open fully. So eventually the end customer who's consuming has to so far. So let's see how it goes.
Thank you, Rajiv. I'll turn to Paul now, if I will, as a ship operator, and Fednav's performance financially, but also your take on how bulk ship owners in general, how they're facing the situation financially, and are they all going to survive? Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. Look, the bulk shipping market was not exactly doing great pre-crisis. We've got we track, say, the BSI, I guess it was the 58 now, but it's at around $10,000 a day average for the last 10 years, which is kind of probably, I don't know, break even-ish for most operators, somewhere in there. So it's not great to begin with. I think it was probably around 8,500 in the spring before COVID, and it went to 4,000 something. So the reality is that most ship operators just immediately started hemorrhaging cash, because you're way below the cost of your charters, and you're way below OPEX for owners. So those first few months, I think, were critical for owners and operators to try to keep their heads above water, because it was just a cash management situation.
Right.
I'm sure many went under already, and some more will certainly go under in the months and years ahead. Of course, the market stabilized now. The BSI is back at 10,000 or so, which again kind of pays the bills, so to speak, now, but again, is not necessarily where you want to be going forward. The problem is, of course, you're never going to recover those lost months revenue, so ultimately, if things pick up in the fourth quarter or sometime next year, again, they'll pick up, but you're never going to get back what you lost in that 1 year. So the good news is that things are stable now, and that look, most of what bulk carriers carry, a lot of it is part of the essential services and the essential goods that the world needs. So it creates a floor in the demand. You will have to have a certain amount of demand to keep things going. So again, you've got stability now, and I think you'll continue to see some stability just based on the necessities of the global supply chain that's agricultural and industrial. But I think for many, of course, we have some protected markets, of course, in the Great Lakes and in the Arctic and things like that. We're a ship owner and an operator, so and we've got terminals, so we're pretty well protected. But for the average owner operator, even if you manage to survive those first brutal few months, you're going to be kind of trying to dig out from that for a long time to come.
Yeah, good comment. Thank you, Paul. Probably got time for just this last question before our mid-break. To Jan, I mean, what have been the financial impacts on Cargill, and your take and bulk shipping in general in the short and long term?
So we've been doing actually pretty well over the period, and I think a big part is actually related to our relentless focus on managing risk, I would say. Be it market risk, be it credit risk, we've been always very prudent and very on the ball in that area, so we didn't have any surprises there. What has also helped a lot for us is in in these uncertain times, we tend to outperform a lot of our peers just because we are quick in making decisions. But what we've also seen is that in these times, and I think Paul was talking a little bit about that, there is a bit of a flight to quality in the market. And what you see is the Cargill name is really paying off in terms of crises. And so we've done relatively well. I think an interesting statistic for the people on this call is the low of our fleet in terms of size was around April, where we were just over 500 ships. And actually today we're back well over 700 ships again. So you can see that the activity is clearly picking up. You can see that in the rates that have been picking up. So I think we are seeing a recovery. There is clearly a long way to go. I don't see anything explosive on the horizon, but we're clearly in a much better situation than we were 4 or 5 months ago.
Good, thank you, Jan. We're at the midpoint, so we're going to show some videos from our sponsors. Thank you again to our sponsors, to Telestack, to Senalia, to North Sea Port, to Fednav, Fleet Management, and Louis Dreyfus Armateurs. We'll be straight back after this, so don't go away, and please enjoy these messages from our sponsors.
The world is a beautiful place. We know. We've seen a lot of it. But it is also getting more and more complex every day. It's our mission to make it simpler with new technology, fresh ideas, and proven expertise, which create a seamless shipping and cargo handling experience for our customers. We never do things the easy way. We do them the right way. The right way for you, and the right way for our planet. From the Great Lakes to the Arctic and seas beyond. We always deliver a higher standard. Fednav. The world is complex. We navigate it.
You hear that? That's the sound of progress. 25 years of the absolute best. Shipping? Well, yes, but so much more. We are planners, builders, fixers, both off and on shore. 20,000 strong. Sailing 1% of the world's containers, 2% of commodities. Not just on time, but with the highest levels of safety. And don't forget sustainability. Every route we map is carefully drawn, crisscrossing the globe dawn to dawn. So while they cheer and give awards, we are focused on our mission. What's that? You want to know why we do what we do? We believe in always striving for better and having a smile on your faces. We don't just manage ships, we support people in all sorts of places. We pioneer, invent, and break new ice. Because when you grow, we grow. Organically, together, to new heights. That's the Fleet Way.
Hello, and welcome back to the second half of the IBJ webinar. I will be getting to some of our viewers' questions, but I'm aware also that I didn't include in the last round of questioning. I didn't include Mrs. Joshi and Morton. So, Mrs. Joshi, first of all, as an operator of vessels of various types, what do you believe to be the short and medium term issues for bulk ship operators? Did you hear me, Mrs. Joshi?
Yes, Mr. Girvan, I heard you, but I tried to unmute myself before I started talking.
Well done.
One forgets that you are muted and then you start talking.
We all do it. We all do it.
So, Mr. Girvan, for the short term and both in the medium term, we all know that bulk has not been doing for a very long time, and we also know that demand has been contracting recently, and the pandemic has dramatically impacted the bulk trade. And I consider that the 2020 demand is going to be lower. We are already seeing when we look at the BDI numbers in terms of 18 and 19, 2020 is definitely depressed. And even though demand is now picking up in the Indian subcontinent, because now the demand for coal is increasing with the requirement for electricity generation. However, there was a period in between where even the demand in India was submerged. And of course, we've seen with the picking up of manufacturing in China, March, April, and May were probably the worst numbers, which are very evident from the BDI, which was substantially low, and which did start picking up in July when most economies started opening up and manufacturing resumed. SCI has been able to surpass this substantially well, because as you know, we've got a diversified fleet. We are into all segments of shipping, and that is how the impact of one segment somehow gets offset by the performance of the other segments. And in both the last quarters, SCI has financially performed quite well because we've got a substantially strong tanker fleet, which constitutes almost 80% of our fleet by way of deadweight. And as we all know that there was artificial demand because of the floating storage, and there was a substantial spike, which helped SCI to financially tide over the pandemic in a substantially stable manner. We've performed quite well. The challenges, of course, remain with respect to cash flows because everybody is squeezed in the pandemic, and getting your receivables, collecting is a very big challenge, and people are both collecting from our side because we can't go and physically chase our customers and deal with them, as well as even from the customer's point of view, because businesses converge, so cash flows are a very big problem. I would say for the bulk trade in the short term and in the medium term, a mix of a time charter and a voyage would do fairly well, where your time charter can give you the stability, whereas the spot charter can help you to sort of capitalize on the spikes which are there in the market. And considering that the crude prices are at a substantially low market levels, anybody in the spot market in this situation would benefit in the bulk trade. So that's my take on the short term and on the medium term.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Joshi. Morten, I do want to get your take on how you see your customers, the ship operators' financial performance, short and medium term, but also to lead into our next round of questions on digitalization, especially during the last 6 months. I mean, how have you been helping owners to meet inspection, survey, and their repair needs? Morten.
Thank you, Ray. I'll start with the financial outlook, both medium and long term, I guess. I think I support that the medium term outlook looks like being reduced, of course. We just a few days ago released what we call the energy transition outlook, which basically predicts how will the energy consumption be even up until 2050. And we do see that during the 6 months' time, there's been a reduction of more than, or roughly 8% in the total energy consumption in the world. And that also, of course, has a huge impact on shipping as well, especially then on transportation of oil. Crude oil has been reduced. We do see that will again pick up, but this reduction of 8% will kind of be a permanent reduction. So on the positive side, you can see that this has a positive impact on emissions, so the greenhouse gas emissions. And that's also one of the challenges, I think, that during these kind of difficult times, we also have to manage greenhouse gas reductions and regulatory issues related to that. So demand side, I think it will gradually pick up, but we have seen a permanent reduction on the energy side. Then for the GL side, we are performing reasonably well financially, but we have, of course, also had to pay attention to cost cutting and to accounts receivable to get paid for what we are doing and so on. So it's been a challenging time, and we do see that short term, at least, there has been extremely low new building activity, very low ordering, especially then in the dry bulk and container sector. So that's going to pose a challenge for us in the near-term future. When it comes to digitalization, I think we've seen that we capitalized hugely on that those investments we've done over several years already. So I mean, we were well prepared to conduct video calls, and our IT infrastructure was well prepared for this. It also allowed us to fully utilize like remote surveys, electronic certificates, and so on, and extracting from the planned maintenance system, we could extract that automatically. And that's been a huge saver, both in terms of the efficiency and availability, not at least. We've seen that the 6 last months, I think that's kind of turbocharged the digitalization process in the industry, which is positive, I think. It does save a lot on efficiency, I think also when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, I think it's also a help to reduce that. We all travel less, of course, that has some positive impact in that sense also. But I think in terms of both safety and efficiency, we have seen tremendous efforts and improvements in that area. And I think, we like to think that DigiGL, we are in the forefront in that area. I think we are.
Thank you, Morten. Sander, I know that the Port of Rotterdam has been at the forefront of new technology for quite some time. So how has it developed during the pandemic, and also how has it assisted in environmental compliance as well for various bulk cargoes? Sander.
This relates to your question: how has new technology enabled the bulk supply chain to continue?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think, because we do not really see a specific so-called COVID-related technology having been evolved, but nevertheless, we are together with our customers continuously looking for digital applications. That's what you referred to, I guess.
Yeah.
And we are aiming for, well, so-called port call optimization and applying data analytics to improve the efficiency in the bulk, well, in every chain, but also in the bulk supply chain, in order to minimize the idle time, generate time savings, and supply chain predictions. And as I have already mentioned, each year around 30,000 seagoing vessels call at the Port of Rotterdam, and in order to plan shipping as effectively as possible, shipping companies need detailed information about, for example, depth, admission policy, and arrival and departure times. And currently, ports communicate this information in various ways. And what we believe is that the port call optimization facilitates port users to plan and execute their activities much more efficiently than in the past. And that also relates, of course, to the carbon footprint, because a more efficient port in terms of logistics will also lead to a lower carbon footprint.
Good, thank you, Sander. Paul, do you think that the crisis itself has had an effect of pushing the drive towards digitalization in the industry?
Look, there's no doubt that it will accelerate what was going on already, which was the push to digitalization. We ourselves are in the middle of our own transformation, and frankly, we're at a very good spot in the road, because we had kind of just done what I would call the basics. We had just done the making sure everybody could work from home and has laptops and has mobile technology. And that first phase was just completed really before COVID hit. So we were in a good position, of course, to be able to hit the ground running and work from home. And of course, now that we're focusing on the next stages of that, making data-driven decisions and kind of more cloud-based thinking and computing, we're kind of doing that with the world up in the air. So it's actually a great chance to design the systems on the go for what the world looks like in the future. Look, the same way, I can't remember the last time I used cash, right? I used to have a bit of cash in my back pocket all the time to pay for things around town, and now I don't know when I've used it, because again, on the small level, right, every vendor of anything has been forced to adapt to electronic technology. So again, companies that used to only accept checks or cash, and now you can pay them digitally, right? So that same concept goes all the way up and down the chain. And the reality is that everything that we do, the virtual clearing or bills of lading, whatever it might be, the move to everything being digital will be accelerated because a lot of it just has to be. And people will just find a way to do things in a more efficient way. Again, just like the service provider that only took checks before. And for us, a big part, of course, has been the communication. As again, like everyone else, we merged to a virtual communication. And actually, the communication with our offices has been better because we just communicate much more regularly now with our international offices, and there's actually been greater collaboration. So, look, I think a lot of the benefits that come out of this, massive negative event globally will be that we all managed to connect, strange enough, a bit more and that the technology wave will accelerate.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Mrs. Joshi, what impact do you believe the crisis has had in pushing digitalization in the industry?
Mr. Girvan, I'll be candid enough to admit that this has been probably a boon for the shipping industry, because the shipping industry has actually been a bit slow in terms of adoption of technology and digitization. And now it's become the need of the hour. There is no option. And needless to say that the pandemic has actually completely changed the way we do business today. Absolutely, totally different norms. And just to add to what Mr. Pathy was just talking about with respect to physical money and digitization, I think the pandemic has also taught us to avoid touching anything if we can so do. And probably physical money that's the reason we don't actually want to touch any coins or any paper money. And that is also a reason why it's post digitization, because and that applies even to work where we used to be so used to, and it's been there a culture in India. We always wanted hard copies of everything. And especially in the government sector, we wanted to look at all proposals in the physical form. I think the pandemic has taught us how to do digital approvals, and e-approvals is today the norm. And I would say the pandemic has also brought in another advantage in terms of the fact that anybody who used to say that he doesn't have time, he or she doesn't have time, I think the pandemic provided all of us substantial time to do everything which was otherwise not possible. And if somebody still says he or she doesn't have time, I think it was only a matter of lack of discipline rather than lack of time, because earlier I could never pack my day with so much of activity, because to go for meetings and from one corner of the city to the other, many days I could not pack so many meetings in a certain day. Now with the virtual platform, you can have back-to-back meetings, and they are just across the globe, and you can do so much more in a day as compared to what you could do earlier. And that is where I bring in efficiency and improve productivity. I think we wasted less time in commuting, and we've been able to be more productive, more efficient, and decisions have been also much faster in terms of when you get a paper, you many times read it and keep it aside. But now it's an e-approval, you just need to click. So sometimes you get prompted to click much faster. Decisions have been much faster, I think. And digitization is the new norm. Technology is the only alternative, I think, for all businesses.
Thank you. Very true. Very true. Rajiv, during these past 6 months, has there been increased digitalization in SR ports?
Basically, as everyone has said, we are all facing the same situation. Everyone has learned to work with no paper situation. So offices are all no paper offices, remotely working. So everything is digitized. The biggest of decisions are being taken. We are, like I sit on the SR global board. So basically, we have bid for refineries across the globe. In this period, we have done so many activities which are, without going around, without any face-to-face meetings. So work is going on, nothing is stopped. And city of the country, and we have allowed many of them to go home, bachelors, young people, because of the situation. So they're working from wherever they are. So I think in general, not just in offices, but also in terms of processes and the management through internet and digitization in cargo handling and managing your day-to-day functions has been quite a lot, where we have been able to work with skeleton staff We, in any case, take pride in saying that we have very few people in staff. But with this situation, I think we have further kind of improved our productivity. Though we have not laid off any people across in the group, not just in SR Ports, but SR, which is the $10 billion group or $15 billion group. We haven't really laid off any people, but I think the utilization has been much better. So digitization is the way to go forward, and everyone is adapting to it.
Right, thank you. Morten, I wanted to give you the last word on this digital round, because I know that DNVGL have had a lot of initiatives, increasing deadweight on vessels and 3D printing for spare part procurement and others. During the past 6 months, have they moved along as planned? Have they speeded up, or have they been hindered?
Basically, they've been speeded up tremendously. And that's the short answer. But then I think we also come to realize one thing when we say digitization. It's not only about making a digital version of paper. It's also to make the work process digital. I think that's quite important. And just a very simple example, like we had digital certificates for quite a few years. And some think that a digital certificate is just having a PDF version of a paper. It's not. Or you may have that, but then it's not really a fully digital certificate, I would say. It's that you need to have the ability to push that certificate through the production process so that when anything is updated, if there's a change of flag or the vessel or whatever, then that is to be reflected in all databases in our production system, immediately also then distributing this updated certificate electronically directly to those that need it, without any person extracting it, making a PDF, sending it by email, somebody receiving that email, storing it in the right device, right place, and so on. You need a truly digital process so that it's untouched by human hands, kind of. I think that's what we focused on, because then we can remove a lot of errors. We can really get efficiency, and that's what we've done in many areas, I think. So, and for us, it's maybe been particularly important because we are really a global company. We have offices in more than 100 countries. So I think kind of in order to ensure consistency, transparency, efficiency, to work in a digital way has been important for us a long time, but even more so now during the pandemics, of course.
Thank you.
So I think it's been speeded up tremendously. And I mean, only the fact that we are now conducting this webinar. I mean, traditionally we would conduct this as a physical seminar, and I really hope we can go back to also have a few physical seminars so we can meet and greet and talk even more informal. But I think like these webinars, it's so accepted now, even in shipping. As Ms. Yoshi said, that it's been a conservative industry, but even shipping is now adopting using webinars and video conference calls and so on. So I think it's a great example of how fast it can actually go when we have to.
Thank you, Morten. No, that's fair comment, and not just conferences, but also awards ceremonies. Don't forget those.
Certainly.
I'm going to turn to some questions from our viewers and ask you individual questions and try and make them as quick fire as possible because there are a lot. Sander, will supply chains stay sufficiently robust into next year to prevent shortages of key raw materials? Sander, did you hear me?
Yeah, do you hear me? Yeah, there's my mute button.
Yeah, did you get the question?
Yes, I got the question. Thank you.
Good.
We think that COVID-19 pandemic has raised some concerns about long supply chains and dependency on a limited number of suppliers, for example, China. As you might know, the EU is working on a strategy on how to secure the supply of raw materials critical to European industries through exploration, investments, and improving recycling, and by looking for alternative suppliers. Although, of course, local mining is limited, recycling, or so-called the circular economy, could be a well, now somewhat bigger opportunity, and we think this could possibly result in an increase in, well, short sea shipping, intra-European, and also a structural increase in storage for, well, strategic stocks can strengthen the supply chain, and Rotterdam's bulk terminals anticipate on this trend also by investing and in expanding covered storage capacity for agri-bulk and minerals and biomass. So that's how we look at it.
Thank you, Sander. Jan, I have a question for you from Australia. What is holding back the adoption of platforms in the digital freight trading space? And do you think that the policy of WFH caused by COVID will accelerate this adoption?
Well, it's a good question, right? And I think this all comes back in the whole discussion on digitalization. There were a lot of trends taking place before the pandemic hit us, and they're all been accelerated. And the platform thing is absolutely one. I think what you have in the freight industry is the combination of being a very traditional industry, which is hold us back quite a bit, but also some of the complexity and also the number of transactions that actually happen in the bulk space is actually pretty limited. If you just compare this to container shipping, where you can have 20,000 BLs on just one ship, it's very different than if you're talking about bulk shipping. So there has always been a little bit of nuances which have put dry, I would say, dry and wet bulk a little bit on the back burner of this. I do think this is the time that we will see some platforms emerge. We will see more digital startups in the space. You've probably seen that we invested in a startup around saving fuel and reducing emissions using data. I think you will get more of those. You will get an ecosystem where platforms will take a important role going forward. I'm convinced about that.
Good, thank you, Jan. We have what I think is a very important question for our Indian speakers, for Rajiv and Mrs. Joshi. It's coming from a cadet from the Maritime University in Kolkata. And he says, I'll quote, "The present scenario is a curse to the ones who's graduating this year. What should we do to get placed in this scenario?" Rajiv, any advice?
Well, I think Mrs. Joshi is the right person to answer that, because we don't take, I think, Madam, if you could take this up.
That's fair enough. But he did, or she specifically was asking for you too. But let's go to Mrs. Joshi.
Yeah, Mr. Girvan, I'll answer that. Like I had already said, that the requirement for onboarding continues. It's not as if we are not signing on any new cadets. And while we have to sign off cadets, those who are completing their training, there is always a requirement for signing off. So it's a continuing process. We've all been talking about, nothing has come to a standstill. The world moves, and so does the shipping keep moving. And there's absolutely no change. It's of course difficult, because signing on and signing off is difficult. But the process continues, and we've also now arranged for no physical indenture. Earlier, there was a procedure of having a physical indenture for the cadets before they were shipboard for the shipboard training. We've done away with that too, and we are now moved on to a indenture system. So we've done the facilitation, so there's nothing to worry, and the profession continues. So the world's not coming to an end, is what my message to the cadet will be.
Good, thank you. Good advice. Good advice.
With the current, Ray, I can add a little bit. That please. I feel that some churning will happen, where the signing on is becoming a bit of a problem. So a lot of people may not want to go on ships, so which will create its own space for the youngsters to come in. In some way, it can be a positive for the youngsters, because more space will be created for young cadets to join in, because there may be a shortage of crew and officers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Yeah. I have a question which I'm fairly sure is from your hometown, or certainly from Quebec, because it's in French. So if everybody can bear with me, I haven't done French since I was at school when I was 16, but I'm sure I'll be able to get there. Y a-t-il et y a-t-il encore des bris de champs logistiques dû à COVID-19 dans le transport de vrac sec? So I guess that means what problems have there been, what breakdowns have there been, and are there still any in logistic change due to COVID-19?
Ray, I just want to applaud you for testing out your school French. I got it. It needs a bit of work, but I got it. Look, the logistics issues here in Quebec are pretty much the same as they are anywhere, right? Which is just that, nothing works as it used to. I guess the good news is that, as it turns out, bulk shipping is actually a pretty COVID-friendly system, because nobody really touches anything. So, you have an industry where things get taken out of the ground by a machine and then put on a rail or a truck or something by a machine, and then taken to a port by a machine and loaded machines, etc. So the reality is that the industry here in Quebec, like it has around the world, is actually able to function very well in the COVID circumstances. It's just, of course, as long as the economic conditions allow it to do so. So it's really a supply-demand scenario. So as long as the supply and demand are in balance, and there is international demand for the commodities here or anywhere, the logistics chain will work, because again, people have adapted with technology and machinery to get the job done.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Morten, I have a question coming for you. What is the most important change in this industry after COVID-19?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess that's the topic of the whole webinar today. I think we touched upon it. Probably digitalization is probably one of the bigger changes that's coming out of this. I think, apart from, of course, some changes to the market, but I think, so maybe it will even also speed up a little bit the transition of the use of energy. So we do see that there is a transition for less transportation. So maybe that will have an impact. Yeah, but digitalization, I think, is the biggest impact.
Okay. No, thank you for that. And I'm pretty disappointed that we're going to have to miss so many questions, because time is moving on. If we're going to get near finishing on time, I need to definitely give you all some time to make your closing remarks and answer one final question. But maybe I'll just have a quick round with everybody answering that question that Morten just did now, and that cliche, the new normal. What do we think the new normal will be in 2021? Sander.
I already touched upon digitization. Of course, that's one, but the buzzword is also, I think, increased agility. In other words, adaptive capacity in the wake of these rigorous changes. Sourcing closer to home, of course, insofar as this is possible. In the case of dry bulk, since, well, like I mentioned, mining activities often take place in remote countries. But in our view, we shouldn't necessarily expect a decline in for us important iron ore segment. The steel industry was hit hard by the COVID crisis, and it will undoubtedly take some time before the situation has been normalized. However, for the moment, we have not reason to believe that this stream will be scaling down. It is now going up. We see it increasing the capacity in Germany. Germany's steel factories is important. Very important for us, from 5% in April towards 95% in October. Nevertheless, the road ahead for this sector, of course, is still well, still has some few bumps and turns and in terms of carbon taxes and new manufacturing methods that are intended to reduce emissions, etc. But for the moment, there's no reason to assume that volumes in this segment will decline. Maybe it's good to give others also some time for their last words.
Yeah, okay. Well, it won't be your last word, but yeah, thank you. Jan, you're one of the most influential people in world shipping. So you must know what the new normal will be like in 2021.
Sorry, Ray, I don't have a crystal ball up here, so I won't be able to give you that. The only thing I do think is what we said earlier. We clearly seen an acceleration of trends which were already there around digitalization, more flexible work arrangement, but also sustainability, right? And we had a question earlier on what was going to happen in the area of sustainability with an economic hit that we've actually seen. And what we see now is actually it's accelerating as well. Europe is actually putting a lot of the support that they're giving to the industries basically on the conditions that it's spent on more greener initiatives. We have today the European Commission basically looking into putting shipping in a carbon scheme in Europe. So also that is actually accelerating. So 21 we'll see that. I think that I have one hope, and maybe they're a little bit my last words as well, is I also hope that the human aspect of the welfare of the seafarer are actually also addressed in a much stronger way and put higher on the agenda than they have been so far.
Thanks. I will come back and give you another last word, if you like. Rajiv, just looking forward, again, for Esso Ports, how will it be in 2021?
I think, there is a move towards more local manufacturing. Our Prime Minister has given a call for self-dependence for the nation. So I think, like it was mentioned, Europe is trying, EU is trying. So every country will try to be more self-dependent. So we call it Atmanirbhar Bharat. Bharat is India. So basically, self-dependence is going to be the motto, where we will create more of manufacturing and to create resources within the country. So that definitely is going to affect shipping and ports. And there will be more, I would say, long haul will be affected, or trade could get affected. In last 6 months.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Joshi, sorry, Rajiv. Go on.
No, it's
finish.
Okay. No, I just feel that
thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So
Good. Okay, we'll come back to you for one last statement.
Yeah.
Okay. Mrs. Joshi, the new normal for you in 2021, what do you think is going to happen?
I think 2020 has taught us it's the biggest disruption in the century that could have hit mankind. And I think there have been many lessons learned which will go forward. I think I'm not going to talk about digitization and the changes which are taking place in India, which Mr. Rajiv has already talked about. I'll try to take it to a different perspective. I would say it's the brave hearts, the people who have the ability to take risks and courage, because it's no longer the philosophy of survival of the fittest. It's not even the most intelligent or the most strongest who will survive. It is only those who can best manage change. And I think this is what we've learned here. And going forward, other than on a personal front, that we are all going to become more careful in terms of hygiene and health, the importance that we give to it. But I think the pandemic is going to have long-lasting, impressionable impact on mankind with respect to the way we go about conducting ourselves. So it will have to be learn, unlearn, and relearn all the way, because the pandemic has taught there is nothing which is static, and we could be facing unprecedented, unknown, unseen challenges. So I think we are equipping ourselves to be more nimble-footed, more agile, and more resilient as we go forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Joshi. I'm going to come to Paul now for the last on this round. Then I will give everyone a chance to sum up and take a minute or so, which will take us over time, just by about 5 or 6 minutes. But I think it's worth it. Paul, your chance to gaze into the crystal ball for 2021.
Thanks, Ray. Like I can't say much that hasn't been said already. I probably echo what Jan said about the acceleration of trends happening already, technology and digitalization. And for us, a top priority, like I know it is for Cargill, is the sustainability, which will be an increasingly bigger focus going forward. Effectively, how we work together changes. The business model gets reviewed, and you know, maybe one thing that I'm hoping it's not the case is because I like to travel, is probably less travel for everybody. Maybe we'll think twice going forward about that trip across the globe to go for that one-day meeting, which I've always enjoyed, but we're taking a second look at that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Paul. Okay, everybody's closing remarks, please. And one question that I'm going to throw in is, during this COVID crisis, what has been the biggest opportunity for your company that has arisen? We'll start with Jan Delman.
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunity for us is in times of crisis is you get a lot closer to your suppliers and your customers, and I think there's just a huge opportunity to really make a difference here going forward and turn some of these trends that we were talking about earlier into real business opportunities, and that's really exciting, to be honest. Good, thank you, Jan.
Morten, your final words and the biggest opportunity that's arisen for DNVGL.
Yeah, I think I'd like to start a little bit broader than just DNVGL. I think this pandemic has showed us all that we can act together, and we can act quickly upon big challenges. And I think we should use this opportunity to also act upon other challenges in a similar way. We all know that global warming is and will become maybe an even bigger challenge in the future. So I think we should really learn from what we have gained of experience during these pandemics in that sense, to act quickly and act swiftly. I think for DNVGL, the biggest opportunity is probably, like Jan says, also working closely with our customers. I think we have managed to help them keep business continuity because we have had a widespread network of surveys, competent surveys, combined with our digitalization effort. I think that's opened a lot of new opportunities. I think we will continue on that journey as we go.
Good, thank you, Morten. Rajiv, your closing statements.
I think that we feel that, you know, those who can manage the change well are going to do well. And I have already, you know, discussed with all my business leaders to increase our targets by 30 to 40%, to think differently, to come up with different thoughts. And we have had some very good results. So I think we are going to, you know, when the markets are falling, when the volumes are falling, up the targets and work towards it. So that's what we are doing.
Very good. Thank you, Rajiv. And Sander, your biggest opportunity that's arisen and your final remarks.
We see it as a port authority, our obligation to keep on continuing investing in sustainable, future-proof infrastructure. And well, in response to, for example, declining coal, and especially steam coal volumes, we are aiming for sustainable production and renewables. For example, we are also now focusing on the new hydrogen agendas everywhere, and the infrastructure that is needed for that. And so far the good news is that despite of less volumes this year, this has had no impact on our current investment, and also so far not has had impact on our customers' investment. So we hopefully that keeps that way, and we keep it that way, and we are together investing, like I said, in that energy transition, which is very important for a sustainable future.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Sander. That's a positive note to end on from Rotterdam. Paul, your closing remarks and main opportunity that's arisen.
Thanks, Ray. You started out this session by asking about the biggest challenges. The biggest challenge for everybody is that every part of your business gets tested, right? technology, chartering, ops, people. And the biggest opportunity is that all those things have been tested and have a chance to get better. You know, somebody once said, never waste a good crisis. I think that's really the opportunity here, is to basically use this crisis and the test that's been given to every part of our industry, our company, and make it better. We're going to continue on as before, focus on service, on growth, on partnerships, on sustainability, integrity, all the things I'd like to say about our business 6 months ago. We're going to focus on now, but I can honestly say that every piece of that will be better and will be stronger because of what we've endured and what we've learned through this segment.
Thank you, Paul. Excellent. And that means the final word is with you, Mrs. Joshi.
So I think, Mr. Girwan, everybody's expressed all that is required to be expressed. So I can just wrap up by saying that the biggest opportunity that the pandemic has brought about is change, which I already talked about. And I think it's given us excellent opportunities to re-engineer, restructure, review, re-look at things which we had taken for granted. And all those changes which are coming in are for the betterment of both mankind as well as business. And we'll be much stronger and much more resilient to brace the future. I think that's the opportunity we've got. We've built up immense confidence. If we can survive this, we'll survive anything.
Good to end on a positive note. Thank you. And thank you to everybody who's been watching worldwide, literally in your hundreds. I think we've had some really good insights from some true industry leaders of how they've met the challenge and coped during the pandemic. Thank you then to our top panel. Thank you, Paul, Sander, Mrs. Joshi, Jan, Morten and Rajiv. Thank you to our sponsors, of course, to Sonalia, North Seaport, to Telestack, Fednav, Fleet Management and Louis Dreyfus Armateurs. Yeah, thank you for watching. We're going to go off screen now, and everybody, speakers and viewers, will see our feedback form. So please fill it in, because when we see your feedback, that will help us to perform better in future. We've covered many topics, and I know that there are some of them could fill a whole webinar by themselves, but maybe they will. Watch this space. Thank you for being with us, and until the next IBJ webinar, goodbye and stay safe.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.